right, so we just saw episode 4 of Miss Marvel. If you want our full breakdown, go check out Corey's on what's next. We really dive into it. But right now, it's time for questions, Corey. And the key question we want to know is, how was Kamala able to go back in time? What is the power of this bangle and its capabilities? So we see her jump back in time, which is crazy. Like, I was totally not expecting that at all, dude. It seemed like it was almost like activated or protected. My first gut to say, like, what is the power of this bracelet? I would say the power of the bracelet is to protect, right? Because when you see her about to fall, what does it do? It protects. When that kid's about to fall down, what does it do? It protects. And you can make that argument really for any, like, power, I suppose. But to me, that seems like a fundamental thing. And then when you talk about with Aisha, what happened is the bracelet was used to, the grandmother, the bracelet was used to protect her, right, on that final train. So that's sort of, I don't really have a great explanation, but I know it's used to protect. And, like, that sort of seems fundamentally what it's supposed to be used for. And I feel like the villain of this show, she's not using it for protection, but for her own personal gain. And that's why I feel like if she gets a hold of it, something catastrophic will happen. But I'm curious, what do you think? Like, what about her? Go ahead.
I think you bring up a great point, right? Like, I think it really shows a representation on protection, right? Like, every time like Kamala is about to face a threat, it kind of shields her every single time, right? Like, you really only see her manipulating the attacks through her hands majority of the time. She really doesn't like throw like
it's almost like a
these.
Jedi.
Yeah, she's definitely more on the defense a majority of the time. She's running away, trying to like manifest these steps for herself to get away. I think to the episode, right? A lot of it probably pulls from the energy of that dimension, right? So I think to their explanation as well, because she was born into human, like our human reality, it
Yes.
helps bring out those powers some more, right? So I think a lot of the capabilities come from this dimension, which tells me most likely if she were to go to that dimension, her powers probably elevate, right, to a whole different level. So that would be something that I could see, like the closer she gets to the source, kind of like Hela with Asgard, right?
Yeah.
The stronger she becomes. But I think also to mention with the Bengals, right? She has only one of the Bengals. So maybe the capabilities really aren't fully capped out yet. She needs to get a hold of that second Bengal to show even more of that abilities. And to your point, maybe, and we don't know yet, and Miss Marvel, the show itself, has done a great job of kind of answering a lot of the questions for us really quickly. Maybe that other Bengal is a little bit more of that attack aspect, right? Maybe the one of the villains of this show that we secretly don't know about yet
Yeah.
is that individual. Right? We got to remember too, Aisha was also an individual working with these clandestines,
Yeah.
right? So maybe there is a heel turn there. We are unsure. We know Marvel loves to do those kind of quick turns,
Yeah.
distract you with a villain you think it's going to be, but then it's
Yeah.
actually somebody else in the background. So they're really building up Aisha to be this big person. Who knows? I think eventually there's going to be some type of engagement where Miss Marvel has to get that second Bengal, right? Kamala specifically. And I think that's what's going to help her elevate to full force. But I think a lot of where this is coming from is that dimension at the end of the day, because that is the source of not only her being a Jinn, but the power, the Bengal itself, right? So, like we've talked about over at the What's Next channel, it's very, very similar to Shang-Chi. They didn't really give us a lot of those answers on where the origins of the 10 rings were
Yeah.
and where they're from. But I think Miss Marvel has done a good job at least giving us a little bit more of that information to start. And I'm sure they'll give us more insight into this as we continue on in the season.
Yeah, and just them going back into the past too, like that was sort of an unexpected thing. Do you think that that has more to do with maybe the dimensional powers of Noor? Like we find out that Noor is the energy source realm that Aisha's from, with the veil, the clandestines, and Kamala's power. That's where it all comes from. So do you think it has more to do with that, or is that maybe an ability of the bracelet for her to travel back in time like that? And also, relating this all back to Loki, we know that if you go back in time, that the timekeepers will come in and interfere unless it's supposed to happen. And your whole theory about maybe the person who saved Kamala's grandmother was actually Kamala, right? An older version of her. So, do you think that this bracelet has the ability to time travel, or do you think this is sort of a cause and effect of the bracelet getting attacked?
I think it's hard to say it doesn't, right? I think the fact that she got tossed back in time has to come from something, right? If it's not the bracelet, it may be due to the powers of this dimension that they're from, right? And again, the bracelet, the bangle is attached to this dimension, nor the energy that they really extract from, right? So I think when it comes to these dimensions too, we really don't fully understand how they work yet. Again, the only other really mention of the dimension aspect is I think maybe What If in Shang-Chi,
A little
right?
bit
But
of Doctor
Shang-Chi
Strange
really
at
on,
the end.
yeah, just a little bit, right? So, or yeah, it's actually Doctor Strange or like the dark dimension, things like that, right? So I don't think we've understood how all these dimensions work, what they do it for, but I think a safe bet is to say that there's got to be some type of time traveling ability, whether it be behind the dimensions themselves,
Yeah.
or more so the bracelet itself. So it's got to be one or the other.
And I think going back to the timekeeper bit of it too is, I think we sometimes fall into looking at our Earth 616,
Mm-hmm.
which shout out to 617 Boston. It means that Marvel is in our zip code. But going
Mm-hmm.
back to the whole timekeeper thing is, I think sometimes we get that main character syndrome where we're like, oh, our
Mm-hmm.
dimension is the main dimension, and this is what's supposed to happen, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when we see these other dimensions that are the dark dimension or this other dimension that is falling apart, I think we kind of have some sort of empathy or thinking like, oh, how do we fix those? But what we found out in Loki and sort of with What If is that some things are just meant to be and supposed to happen. So perhaps
Mm-hmm.
Kamala is supposed to be there in that specific
Mm-hmm.
time, and it's all gonna play out in its way, and in some weird way, it's already happened in the past, but it's happening currently for us.
Mm. Yeah, I think it could be the case. Truthfully, like I think an important thing though to know, where I think it might be a little different to just
Mm-hmm.
counter a little bit
Sure.
here, is they have these two different aspects going on, and I'm gonna kind of try to create a visual aspect to this, right? I think we have these universes, right? They established this in Multiverse of Madness, right? Like 616, 808. And you got to look at these universes as like stacked on top of each other, right?
Yep.
And I think the thing with the dimensions is they're not stacked on top like universes. It's right more so like side to side. It's
Mm.
still within that universe, right? All these dimensions are within the 616 universe, right?
Mm.
So an 808 universe up here
Yeah.
also has its dark dimension. It
Mm.
has its Tao Low, right? It
Yeah.
has its Nor, right? Where these
Yes.
clandestines in Jin is from, right? So I think a lot of these individual dimensions, as we talk about again on What's Next, not to
Yep.
plug me, but I love to plug myself.
Got to.
Um, there's going to be, I think, original powers or some type of abilities coming from these different dimensions that
Mm-hmm.
allows us to expand on these superheroes, right? And I think the aspect of universes is more so to show us the different variations and
Mm.
variants, similar to Loki, that there could be, right? There's
Yeah.
people who take different paths and do different things, maybe look a little different, and that's those different universes,
Yeah.
right? But I think where different powers and entities and things like
Different
that and
rules of,
expanding
yeah.
exactly different rules on how things work. Other individuals age a lot faster in this dimension than
Mm.
our dimension, right? So I think that's what these dimensions are doing, right? So not only in this phase are we expanding upwards and outward, right? We're also expanding to the sides, right? So they're really hitting us through from two different angles on, hey, there's a bunch of other things that you
Yep.
think you knew that are completely different, but there's also a bunch of things in our universe that you didn't even know about that we're about to show you, right? So
Ladies and
they could,
gents, That's why
They
this
could
guy,
be time travelers. We don't know.
ladies and gents, that's why this guy is our Marvel expert, and that's why you got to go follow and subscribe to him over on What's Next TCC. The guy does incredible work. Corey, thank you for coming on today's show. Make sure you guys comment down below what your thoughts are about season 1, episode 4, the bracelet, what is going on with that, the time travel, some of your predictions about where we're heading with this. Corey, my man, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you. And everyone who's watching, remember, just be you. Peace.
Thanks for